The time is 9:50 p.m. on August 18th, 2019 in the great state of Texas. My name is Mickey and I am the producer of Yield Backyard Bullshit Podcast.
Welcome back to the backyard, everyone. I'm Dealer. We're not all in Texas.
What?
Everybody stay great. Welcome back. This is your boy Coolhand.
It's your cousin Vinny hanging out.
And thanks for pointing out that not all of us are in fact in Texas. Anyway, moving on, we're going to continue on from our topics episode that we introduced a few episodes ago. The topics we're going to tackle first, this one especially, is a sports franchise's biggest oof. Now, if you don't know what oof is, it's the sound effect made whenever someone fucks up. So, yes, just like that. And with that being said, we wanted to think about, well, a lot of sports franchises, a lot of opportunity for fuck-ups, and a lot of opportunity for big fuck-ups. And with that being said, let's get this ball rolling, and I'm going to throw it to our good old cousin Vinny for what his pick for our sports franchise's biggest oof is.
Okay, so this was a tough one because there are plenty of, no matter what sport you're looking at, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, I mean, you name it. There's oofs all over the place, but this one to me stands out, and it was one that as a kid, it was one of the first things I became aware of in sports, and I am talking about the 1999 NFL Draft, specifically the 1999 NFL Draft where the New Orleans Saints took Ricky Williams 5th overall. Now, I'll give you a little backstory. Ricky Williams, college running back at the University of Texas, historically one of the best all-time in college football. He finished his career with 6,200 yards, capped off by a senior year in 1998 where he ran for 2,100 yards and 27 touchdowns. Numbers that are absurd. This is a college football player. Now, in his junior year, he ran for 1,800 yards and 25 touchdowns. So in just his junior and senior years alone, he had 4,000 rushing yards and over 50 touchdowns. These are numbers that there have been running backs that have had seasons like this, but they're very few and far between. And if I'm not mistaken, his 6,200 yards still stands as the second best total all time for a college running back. Okay, so this guy was a stud in college. Won the Heisman. He's coming out in the draft. And he was a very big deal. He had a great career, and people knew he was going to go really high. So, fast forward to the biggest oof. Mike Ditka, famed coach of the Bears during their Super Bowl days, was currently the head coach of the Saints, and he was kind of towards the twilight end of his career. Well, he was in love with Ricky Williams, as most people were. Again, he had a phenomenal career. What's not to love, right? Well, he was so certain that Ricky Williams was going to be the cornerstone of their franchise that him and general manager Bill Kurich made, in my opinion, the biggest oof ever. Now, running backs in the NFL, while they are amazing, they put up great yards, they sell jerseys, things like that, they're not as durable, their careers aren't quite as long, and therefore they're not paid as much. Hence, Le'Veon Bell last year sat out the entire year because he didn't get a contract. These guys are not the highest paid position in football, even though they're on offense and score all these points. My point is, franchises, after this disaster of a draft, stopped valuing the running back quite as much. And it's gone down consistently till now. Here's what the Saints did. They offered 9 draft picks to move up to 5th overall in the draft. Not 1st overall in the draft. Not 9 draft picks. They offered the 1999 first round pick, 12th overall, so they moved up from 12 to 5. their third-round pick, this is all in the 1999 draft, so again, they move up to get one pick in the first round. They give away their 12th overall pick, their 71st overall pick, their 107th overall pick, their 144th overall pick, their 179th overall pick, and their 218th overall pick. Just to put that in perspective, that is their first, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round draft pick to get a running back at number 5. So essentially, you erase an entire draft class from the Saints.
Not to mention Tom Brady was also in that draft class. And
Yep.
They were rolling Aaron Brooks out at the time. So,
And I'm not even done.
yeah.
They gave away all those picks. They also gave away their first round, third round, and fourth round pick in the 2000 draft. So the next year, they had such a terrible season in 1999 that in 2000, they would have had the second overall pick in the draft. And you know the type of player you can get at number 2 overall in the NFL draft. You can get someone who's transcendent, which is what they were hoping to get with Ricky Williams. Well, they gave all this away, so essentially erasing 2 full years of kids out of college. And here's what Ricky Williams did. In his first year, he had 884 yards and 2 touchdowns in the NFL. The Saints went 3-13. The next year, didn't have their first round, third round, or fourth round pick. Ricky Williams had exactly 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. And then in 2001, he finally broke through to have a decent season and had 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns. The stats are okay for a rookie, but for what they gave away, they essentially torpedoed their entire franchise until Drew Brees was able to rebuild things and get them back into Super Bowl contention in the early 2010s. So, for me, there's never been a mistake that bad in the NFL draft. There's never been a trade that historic that crippled a franchise as such. And the guy, as a rookie, didn't come out and run for 2,000 yards and 27 touchdowns. He had 800 yards and 2 touchdowns as a rookie, and they went 13-3. And they never were able to recover. Mike Ditka's career would end 2 years later, and he would never coach again because of this. So, for me, that's the biggest oof between the Saints general manager and Mike Ditka that you could come up with.
Jeez Louise.
That's a really good one, actually. That's a really good one. I like that.
That was great. And so I'm going to bring up Ricky Williams again here later. And so there's kind of a part 2 to this that fits into another subject. It's not like Ricky didn't become a good player. In fact, the year after they traded him, he led the league in rushing with 1,800 yards and 16 rushing touchdowns in his 4th year in the league. So the guy did blossom into something really good within 4 years. But for what they gave away, my God, it's just what you could do with all those draft picks and a good evaluation of talent can change a franchise, or it can torpedo one. Wow.
That
So, taking it back to the 1999 draft.
that is quite the oof. I can feel the Superdome quaking as we speak.
Flooding as we speak.
Flooding with the tears of Saints fans.
That's
Stop.
not a Katrina joke. That's not a Katrina joke. That's a New Orleans is under sea level joke. Separate things. I would never make fun of Katrina. It's a terrible disaster. I wouldn't. It's a terrible disaster. And New Orleans is a really fun fucking city. I don't want it to sink, but the sea level's rising. The glaciers are melting, boys. Anyway,
Look,
there's my oof.
New Orleans is dirty sin. Vegas is clean sin. So if you really want to go have a dirty time, go to New Orleans.
Better food in New Orleans, just saying.
Well, no, fake news.
All right. I mean, yeah, there's great shit. I'm not getting off on this. That's my oof. New Orleans Saints are stupid, and so is my Ditka.
Well,
Fair enough.
let's see if the stupidity can be possibly matched when we go to Dealer, as he tells us what his pick for a sports franchise's biggest oof is.
Okay, so mine, you had such a great in-depth thing about why the draft completely fucked over a franchise. And mine is going to be a little bit more of a personal level about just wow, how did you let that go? And for that, we're going to go way back. We're going to get into the world of baseball. And I'm certain that there's definitely, like you said, a lot of big oops around the sports world. But I'd like to touch on this with baseball because this is kind of like the knife in you that you stab in somebody, and you're just like, haha, your team did this. And everybody just looks at you and says, how did this happen? Why did you do this? And for that is, in 1919, the Boston Red Sox traded Babe Ruth for cash. For $25,000. $25,000. They gave away Babe Ruth.
Today's money, that's like $220,000.
It's absolutely nothing in today's money. And, Boston's like, oh, yeah, we got this pitcher. He's kind of good. He's hitting, 29 home runs, But the owner says, hold on, the Yankees are willing to pay me $25,000. So I'm going to take that money, and instead of reinvesting it back in the team, I'm going to create a play. Yes, a theatrical play. Some people always say, oh, you sold the farm to rent a cow. They sold the farm to get nothing back. This team got absolutely slaughtered. It's not even like, well, maybe he put the money somewhere else in the team and kind of, no. Absolutely not a dime for Babe Ruth's value went back to the Red Sox for this. It went straight to Beaver.
Also got part ownership in the Red Sox for this.
Yeah. He got what?
That's actually true.
So, and so it gets even worse for him because the Red Sox are sitting here with this guy who's thinking, oh, he's only hit 29 bombs. He did just hit, shatter the Major League home run record, goodbye dead ball era. But hold on a second. The next year, when he goes to the Bronx, he hits 54 home runs.
Wow.
Absolutely smashes it. Almost doubles his home run total and says, you know what? He got the Red Sox in total, actually, just to kind of put it in perspective, that time of the year, Ty Cobb was the one who was getting paid the most, and he was getting $20,000 a year. So for $5,000 more, you just trade the best player who will just absolutely go on a tear for the Yankees. Within 4 years, he's going to go on and win the World Series, and then he's going to go on and win it 3 more times after that. It's just an unbelievable trade that you just think, how do you let a player like Babe Ruth go? I honestly did take into consideration here, David Ortiz from the Minnesota Twins. That was an iconic slugger that got away real quick. But I really settled thing on this because if you talk to anybody who knows baseball and you say Babe Ruth got traded for something that never helped the team,
Literally $275,000 in today's money. I fact checked while you were talking, and you're not kidding. It's a $250,000.
Talking out of my ass then.
No, you're almost dead on.
So he this was just the biggest. Some people don't even watch baseball. Just sit there and say, "Wow, that's bad. That is a bad move on the ownership, and that is a bad stain on."
Now, is this where the curse of the Red Sox? Obviously, they broke it in the early 2000s with their World Series win, but their whatever 80-year drought or whatever it was. Didn't it stem from this trade?
I don't think that people said like this is the reason for the thing because they didn't really impute that. But yes, it was at first. It wasn't like, hey, this is Babe Ruth's fault. this trade was the Babe Ruth trade. That's fault. But yeah, it was one of the major ones, and it did step up. They didn't win it until they finally show up a few years later, 2004. Just a few years later, right?
Yeah, right. 84 years later. Yeah.
Yeah, just a few years. Hey, not today, but come back in 2004. Come watch your Red Sox win. So no, honestly, it definitely could have kicked it off. We can go into a deep dive about why the Red Sox were just like a terrible front office for a long time. But this definitely set them into a spiral. And I want to say one of the things I did want to consider for a big sports oop was that whenever Pablo Escobar had actually his own soccer team, and that was probably my second pick. So I think that if you're a fan in today's world, and then you said, hold on, your team was owned by a drug dealer, a mass murderer and drug dealer, you'd probably be like, wait, what? I need to pick a new team.
We could give that a whole segment. Yeah.
I think we could. So that tip of the cap to that one. But that concludes my pick on this one here.
Well, not only trading away the baseball legend Babe Ruth is bad enough, but possibly contributing to an 80-year championship drought? Oh my god, that is a fucking sports oof if I've ever heard of one. And we're gonna keep it going when Coolhand tells us his pick for a sports franchise's biggest oof.
So I had several of these. It was really tough for me to choose which one I really wanted to go with. My first thought, now this is more personal, the Dallas Stars signing Sean Avery, one of the biggest douchebags of all time, ended up getting cut in his first year of a 3-year deal. The other one I was thinking about was RG3 and what the Redskins actually gave.
That's a good one.
Wow.
But for me, this guy has still set their franchise back, and he was drafted 12 years ago. He could be on one knee, and he could throw it through the uprights 80 yards downfield. And part of this is only because the money that they had to pay these guys back then. If it would have been today, it wouldn't have been such a big deal. They wouldn't have got their ass kicked so bad. But the man I'm talking about, first overall pick in the 2007 draft, they were paying him about $18 million a year as a rookie. That's because the contracts were so screwed up back then. Guy couldn't stay off the lean. They were paying him so much, and that he put that franchise back. Like I said, it's been 12 years since they drafted him, and they still haven't fully recovered from that. People forget Lane Kiffin was actually the head coach of that team, and now he's coaching Florida Atlantic. That shows you the kind of impact that actual draft had. He was so bad, so terrible. He was such a piece of garbage. And to be fair to Lane Kiffin, he never wanted him. But the organization made him draft him and basically ruined about 50 different people's careers. So way to go to Jamarcus Russell. Way to be a piece of crap as a human. Congratulations. You got paid a whole bunch of money to suck balls.
Now, what position was this person on the Raiders?
He was the quarterback.
The quarterback?
Out of LSU. They
Quarterback
just
out
won a
of
national
LSU.
championship with him.
They say the strongest, third strongest arm to ever come through the draft was Jamarcus Russell. And
So-
he had all kinds of impressive stuff, but just you have to be at least semi-smart, especially a quarterback in the NFL. And that guy compares rocks. So
If you want a good laugh, famous rappers Lil Wayne and 2 Chainz were on an ESPN show within the last couple of years, and they talked about, is there an athlete you party with the most? And Lil Wayne starts laughing and says Jamarcus Russell, and said he literally used to come around with a duffel bag of cash and lean as in cough syrup. And he was arrested and charged in 2010. And they found syrup and controlled substances like all in his body. He went so hard with his NFL money. And he's a feature in the ESPN 30 for 30 broke.
Oh yeah, I mean when you look at like all-time biggest draft busts, for me he's not the worst draft pick of all time, but he is the most expensive. And there is something to be said for that in the hard salary cap era that we live in. That he took up so much of their salary cap that, like I said, he set the Raiders back a decade by him being so awful. You know, I mean, they started Andrew Walter, all right, over Jamarcus Russell. That's how bad they were. Andrew Walter? Question mark? Like, who the hell is that guy?
Yeah, and at the time, $18 million a year for a quarterback was huge money, and for a rookie was unheard of. To put it in perspective, Ezekiel Elliott right now is holding out for $15 million a year, $3 million yet less than Jamarcus Russell got in 2003.
Wow. And they had a smaller salary cap back then.
Now it's different positions, different, quarterback to a running back, but still, I mean, just to put it in perspective, how much they were paying him at the time.
Yeah, it's just outrageous, and he's basically the reason why they changed the CBA so that rookies aren't getting paid so much. His specific contract, he made something like 30-40 million guaranteed off that thing, and which is disgusting.
Every nickel gone.
That's disgusting.
Is it?
Gotta keep it real. Gotta keep it real.
I don't know. I think if you're an unproven...
I'll take 10% to not suck so much. To suck just as much as he did.
No. See, I think I'm on this side.
I can't throw the ball that far.
If you're a rookie, or if you're before a rookie, and you perform so well that you convince professional scouts and professional front office that you're worth the money, take it. That is a dumb move on their part, and this is not on his.
I am zero mad at Jamarcus Russell for taking the money.
Oh, okay.
I am just disappointed in the way the CBA was set up, that he was able to get so much money for accomplishing nothing.
So you're in favor now the CBA limits dumb front office moves.
Well,
yes, we're a fan that they limit dumb front office moves. In fact, I'm trying to pull up the clip now so I can watch Lil Wayne talk about Jamarcus Russell. It's been a long time since I've heard that, and that's funny.
Yeah, because Lil Wayne is our local NFL.
The dude knows sports.
He does. He does know sports. Lil Wayne does know sports. I'll give him.
But I like the Jamarcus Russell pick, man. Coolhand, that was a good one.
Good pick.
Any closing thoughts on Jamarcus Russell, Coolhand?
He don't want to talk to you.
How dare you, sir? I mean...
Suck.
Hello?
Suck.
Hey, welcome back. We can hear you.
Alright, do you have any closing words on Jamarcus Russell, Coolhand?
No.
Yeah, he don't want to talk to you. Told you.
Jesus Christ, maybe one of you should ask him.
That's how disappointed in Jamarcus Russell he is.
A fair statement.
While we're
Let's hear,
transitioning,
yeah.
how do we feel about
can y'all hear me?
There we go. Hello. Nope.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
You know, this reminds me of the other night I was playing online on Rainbow Six Siege, and this guy was playing on McDonald's Wi-Fi, and he had like the shittiest internet connection. It was hilarious. So,
dude's got to get by. Stealing Wi-Fi, the modern stealing cable. You know, I think my dad was so redneck back in the day that he stole cable.
Yes,
For a
Coolhand.
second.
if your family didn't steal cable, yeah, you're missing out.
Yeah, man, we got moved all over the place there, but we love the Jamarcus Russell pick.
Yeah, good pick.
All right, Coolhand, can you still hear us and can you still talk?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, I had to get all out and stuff. Please don't cut
your voice.
this.
Don't cut this? Shoot, I actually...
Absolutely cut it.
Anyway.
This is good humor.
Oh, I agree. Well, now that...
Any listener that stayed with us through this whole little part, God bless you.
Any...
Best fans I could ask for.
Anywho, so... I will be wrapping up this segment about a sports franchise's biggest oof. Now, mine comes from the world of basketball. And by God, there were a lot. One of them I actually thought about using for this segment, but I'm actually going to use it for another segment that we're having later. But if you want to talk oofs, I don't think there's a bigger oof in the NBA than the New York Knicks. They...
Just in general?
Just in general, the last time this team...
Franchise is oof.
The last time this team has won an NBA championship was in 1973 with Willis Reed and Walt Frazier.
I don't
Now,
know those people.
Phil Jackson, too, by the way.
Phil Jackson played on that team?
He was.
by God, he was on that team. Anyway, so, the New York Knicks. Last time they made the playoffs was in, 2012, 13 with Carmelo Anthony and Tyson Chandler? Simply put, that was a highlight for many New York Knicks fans, as the last time they had any hope of playoff contention was in the very late 1990s with Patrick Ewing. Unfortunately, they had to go up against the newly acquired Tim Duncan-led, David Robinson-paired San Antonio Spurs. But
Allen Iverson was on that team, too.
I'd have to fact check that.
Practice?
Simply put,
Double check.
Y'all talk about practice?
speaking of, simply put,
Practice?
good lord. Anyway, so the New York Knicks have had a interesting, to say the least, few seasons. The best thing to ever happen to the New York Knicks recently was the acquisition of one Kristaps Porzingis, the Latvian-born power forward, even though he's clearly a center, guy who's constantly being called the next Dirk Nowitzki, seeing as how he's from Europe. He's a big man, and he can shoot. Now, he's not quite a shooter as Dirk Nowitzki, not yet anyways, but he's certainly a better defender. Now, for those of you unaware, the New York Knicks this past season traded him to our very own Dallas Mavericks in exchange for quite a number of things. The Mavs sent them over a few draft picks as well as 3 of their own players, 2 of which aren't even on the New York Knicks anymore. With that being said, the New York Knicks had a lot of money at their disposal. A lot of it. They had, I believe, enough money for 2 maximum contracts that they could offer players during this most recent off-season free agency period. And the 2 biggest names that were being talked about coming over to New York was Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And they did go to New York. To the Brooklyn Nets.
It was really great. It was really great to watch all that unfold.
Now, as much as I disagree with Stephen A. Smith on a lot of things, him being a hardcore Knicks fan and him just, in a word, suffering for this amount of time was just an absolute joy to watch as a viewer of ESPN's First Take. Now, you'd think losing out on your huge free agency picks, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, all going to different teams, not yours, you'd think this would be an opportunity to just buckle down, do some soul searching as an organization, think to yourself, you know what? Free agency has not worked out for us. So we need to build what young core we have, work from the draft, and just full on enter a rebuild. But this is the New York Knicks we're talking here. They lost out on free agency, and I didn't mention this earlier, but they placed third in the NBA draft, meaning they were unable to draft the supposedly unstoppable power forward of a force that is Zion Williamson. So not only do you trade your star power forward to the Mavs, you don't get any of the star non-power forwards during free agency, and you didn't even get to draft the star power forward that has as much hype built around him as LeBron James. Now, all of those alone could be a sports franchise's biggest oof, but my pick for the biggest sports franchise oof is what the New York Knicks did next. Ladies and gentlemen, this team, during this offseason, didn't sign one power forward, not two power forwards, not three power forwards, but four. Four power forwards to the New York Knicks. These players...
We're inventing the game.
These players, Taj Gibson, Marcus Morris, Bobby Portis, and Julius Randle. All of these players, at best, are okay. That is my pick for the sports franchise's biggest doof. Signing four power forwards.
Would you want to go
shocked.
out and see a Knicks game?
Hell no. The mecca of basketball is now at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. I'm going to a Nets game.
Staples Center for me, man. I'm gonna go see Kawhi and Paul George.
I'm surprised.
Next got a new arena.
I'm surprised you're not going to see LeBron and Anthony Davis.
That's also true.
That would be very fun to watch. No, I agree though. The Knicks are trash. The Knicks have always been trash. And I've never understood how every year the media seems to hype up some type of free agent act or something big going on with the Knicks because they're the Knicks and because they play in New York and because they play in the Garden. But yeah, they've never done anything. Like you said, they've been a trash franchise forever.
But the weird thing here is that the Knicks are in the top 10 in attendance. Almost like since 2010, they've been in the top 5. Only recently have they started to slip to the top 10. So maybe fans are starting to kind of pull back the veil and be like, wait, I'm being fed crap. This team isn't that good.
Yeah, I'm not.
A lot of those are visiting fans. Because Madison Square Garden is the most famous arena in the world, right? So, it's part of the issue like the Dallas Cowboys have, is their arena is so nice and famous that people want to go as a visiting team to see it.
So maybe the Suns need to learn something here.
Phoenix is a terrible town. Phoenix is going to be uninhabitable in the next 20 years.
Yes, to the New York Knicks fans, I have one thing to say. Have you heard of Albert Einstein's theory of insanity? Just sell the team, James Dolan. Sell the team. And moving on that will conclude our A Sports Franchise's Biggest Oof segment as we continue on to our next topic, which is there are a lot of athletes in the big four sports here in the United States. A lot of them really likable. You got Mike Trout, you got Kawhi Leonard, you got someone who plays football, and you got those that play hockey. Although, honestly, if Sean Avery is the biggest douchebag in the league, then by God, I'd like to introduce him to Jamarcus Russell. Anyway, some of these athletes make some moves or have an abrasive personality that makes them a bit unlikable with their teammates, coaches, organizations, contemporaries, colleagues, but most importantly, the fans. Some of these players do deserve the hate they receive, and others don't. And the athlete I'm starting with, that I personally believe does deserve the hate they receive, at least in part, comes from the world of basketball and has been deemed by the NBA fan base the Snake. I'm referring to Kevin Durant. Now, to put this into perspective,
because Durant used to be a loved player. He used to be a loved player in the NBA.
Oh yeah, like he was one of the favorite players back in the early part of the 2010s, 2011, 2012, 13, especially in 2012 when he went to the finals. But to put this into perspective, imagine if how do I put this in baseball terms? Imagine if Mike Trout and the Anaheim Angels met the Houston Astros in the American League Conference Finals the year the Astros won the World Series, with the Anaheim Angels losing, and then Mike Trout going on and joining the Astros the very next offseason. That'd be a dealer. As our resident baseball expert, you would think that'd be a kind of a dick move, right?
Absolutely.
So that's essentially what Kevin Durant did. He met the eventual gold championship team, the Golden State Warriors, in the Western Conference Finals, lost, and then the very next offseason joined that team. He has been called things from a ring chaser to the snake name that the fan base deemed him earlier, a traitor to Oklahoma fans, and worst of all, I do believe that this move has negatively impacted his legacy. Because Kevin Durant has 2 championship rings and 2 NBA Finals MVPs. But people, not only do people say that they don't care, but on top of that, they also say, oh, those rings mean nothing. LeBron's ring in 2016, worth more than Kevin Durant's. LeBron's rings when he was in Miami, worth more than Kevin Durant's. Dirk Nowitzki's ring, 2011. Okay, bad example. San Antonio's ring in 2014 and Kawhi's ring in 2019 all mean more than Kevin Durant's 2 rings he won with an admittedly overpowered team. Kevin Durant, I sympathize with you, but you got it coming. You really do. As much as you're a fantastic player, but by God, you deserve it.
I'll be quick. I disagree. I think for 2 reasons. One, he's playing in the era that was created by LeBron's decision to go to Miami once upon a time. This is not the first time a super team has been put together.
60%,
and I think that era... Go ahead.
60% of the All-NBA team this year, first, second, and third team, changed teams this year, by the way.
So it happens. This is the era where that goes down. Okay? Part 2 of that is, I think we've seen that playing with Russell Westbrook in the NBA is kind of an ass whip. Because he consistently is a top player, yet the team chemistry is always kind of off. You know, he demands the spotlight and the ball. And I think for Kevin Durant, free agency came up. He didn't want to stay there. and the best team in the league was offering him a max contract. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer in this day and age. I like Kevin Durant. I'm a sympathist for him, but I understand what you're talking about. He is one of the most hated guys in sports. So I'm going to err on the side of I don't think he deserves it, but I understand why you think he does.
All right, well, sounds like we have our topic for the next backyard throwdown because, oh man, do I have a few responses to that. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. And before we move on, I'm going to go ahead to say this. I agree with Vince. It makes sense. It makes sense.
All right.
I agree with you, Nick.
All right, well, a 2v2 for the next backyard throwdown, but we must move on with this subject.
There's only 2v2. Fuck all y'all.
Aren't you?
Pick your side.
Aren't you clever? Anyway, moving on. Coolhand. Who is an athlete that you think may or may not deserve the hate they receive?
So I originally wanted to go with Bryce Harper. Not getting what he deserves. I think a little bit that he gets hated on just because he's so loud and brash, and we've had a lot of expectations of him over the years. But he's kind of sucked this year, so that doesn't really help my argument. I'm going to actually stick in the NBA. I'm going to go with a guy who made a conference finals one time. A guy who couldn't even stick with the Houston Rockets last year more than about 3 weeks. I wish he would have stuck with him longer because I could have made a shit ton of money selling t-shirts with melanoma on it because he's a Cancer. That's right. I am going with Carmelo Anthony. And he
making money off of
absolutely
Cancer.
deserves all the crap that he gets.
No, I agree. I hate Carmelo Anthony. I don't like him.
He's a Cancer. He, like I said, he made the conference finals one time, and I feel like that was a little bit of luck. When he was on Denver, he was a good player, and he even won a national title with Syracuse when he was in college.
Beat Texas in
And
the
I
Final
thought he
Four
was going to go on
2003.
to have a great NBA career. And the man can score from anywhere. But he's a piece of shit as a human. He wants to live in New York so bad that he would rather have a shitty team than live in New York than live in like Milwaukee and play with Giannis and enjoy his life. At least Houston's a major city. Like I said, I've called him melanoma for about 5 years. I think it's a perfect fit. I wish he would have lasted Houston longer at Houston. I would have made a killing on a melanoma shirt.
Oh, how many? Do you know how much his max contract with the Knicks was, off the top of your head?
I think at that time it was like $27 million.
A year or?
Yeah, a year.
Do you know how many years by chance? Like,
At least 6. I want to say it was like 8, maybe.
Jesus Christ.
You wouldn't think so. It feels like it shouldn't have been that long ago. But Carmelo and I are the same age. We're actually only about 2 weeks apart on our birthdays. And
Wow.
as the old man of the group, it's very depressing to see him doing so poor. The thing is, if you would just accept his role as a 6th man off the bench, Jerry Stackhouse style, with the Mavericks back in the day, he'd be a great player. But he won't accept that role, and it's just killing him. And it just makes him look like a bigger douchebag than he already.
Yeah, some players unfortunately do not appreciate being relegated to a bench spot, and melanoma is a perfect example of that. Rest in peace his career, or maybe not if you're Coolhand. Moving on.
He'll be playing in Europe next year. You heard it here first.
All right, we have a prediction on us. Keep your ears posted because you heard it here first. Melanoma to the European League. There's a bubonic plague joke in there somewhere. Anyway.
It's already a cancer joke.
Hitting the deadly diseases hard, huh? All right.
Jeez. Edgy. I mean, might as well just call him heart attack.
Okay.
All right.
Cardiac arrest. Add it in there. Let's go ahead. Talk about lung disease while we're at it.
All right. Well, speaking of diseases, dealer. Is there by chance a player who is by chance so repulsive that they deserve the hate they receive?
Well, the topic was actually an athlete who may or may not deserve the hate they receive.
Oh.
And
What topic?
I aired on the side of an athlete who does not deserve it. Now, this you guys have heard me rant about him earlier, and just it immediately pops into my head because he's the guy who, whenever you say his name, you think of him flying through the air intentionally cleating a catcher in the face. He's the guy who was America's first sports celebrity, who was, making $20,000 a year, and he was considered the guy who would stop in the middle of a baseball game to go beat up a Negro fan just because he was Negro. That was a rumor, by the way, that did not actually happen.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Whoa!
And that man is Ty Cobb.
Yikes.
The most improperly hated baseball player in history. Now, Ty Cobb, he was...
Wait, so we're defending the guy.
Absolutely.
Who beat up... Okay, continue. I'm going to
But
hear
it
this out.
never actually happened. So, the interesting thing about Ty Cobb is there's a lot of folklore saying, whenever he died, no one went to his funeral. That's a lie. His funeral was jam-packed with people who loved him. Ty Cobb ushered in a new era where sports athletes went from drunkards to actual celebrities who were paid by corporations. Ty Cobb he played with a bunch of drunkards who would, after the night game, go up to the bar and celebrate or just completely get hammered because they lost. And they would play the next game completely drunk and hungover. And they'd walk up to the kid and be like, and just barely dragging on. And Ty Cobb, who the previous night, whenever he ended his game, he would actually go to the Library of Congress consistently, season after season, and read books and meet with political people and try and give his advice. He was actually one of those people after his game, he went and did better things and to help out the world be a better place. Really honorable right there, and not get drunk. His own teammates and opposing said, well, Ty Cobb's just not a real baseball player for that, And there is something to be said, yeah, maybe he was a little bit quicker because everyone else was still hungover. Yeah, that could be a possible advantage to him. But realistically, this guy actually did care about a lot of people. He was the first sports player to ever use his money to create a hospital with it. And he created it in Georgia. He's very big asshole move right there. Helping out people from dying. Man, what an asshole move. Also another asshole move, signing up people for free college tuition scholarships. Big asshole move right there. Classic asshole. So, sure, he actually was arrested a few times. This was the rough and tough. Where actually back in the time where if an umpire made a bad call, it was not unusual to turn around and start punching or kicking the umpire. Original umpires looked a lot like police officers. They were very large. They had broad-chested because they had to act as police officers on the field or else they got beat up by players.
Baseball's got a TV problem. I think that would fix television. If you could turn around and punch the umpire, I don't care who's on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. I'm watching every game.
Absolutely. I think it was the Reds whenever he went to go charge the mound. The batter just turned around and kicked the catcher first before running out to the catcher. Now imagine just the batter. You be called strike 3 and he just casually leans over and kicks him in the dick and says, "No, umpire. Here's a dick kick for you." That'd be a phenomenal time.
I need to watch old baseball
All the memes have been great.
I need to go run
So-
through old baseball games.
Absolutely, and one of the things they said, oh well, he just hated Negroes. He pulled him out of the stands because he was black, and he started punching him, and that didn't actually happen. He did walk by the stands and get into a verbal, heated argument with this man, but that was not because he was black. To say that is a complete lie.
Can we confirm if Ty Cobb was a racist?
I would err on the side of racist in today's philosophy, perhaps. Racist in that time, no, because a racist in that time would not become president of the Negro Leagues. If you hated the blacks so much, why would you put in your money and time and effort to promoting Negroes to the Major League Baseball? That doesn't make sense now, does it? So, sure, you could say, oh, well, he would say, words that were inflammatory.
I didn't know he was the president of that league. Okay.
He was one of up there, right there, on the Negro Leagues, and he put in so much time. There's so many photos and videos of him helping them, train them. It's phenomenal. He really did care about blacks in baseball, and he was one of the major advocates saying they have a right to play just as you and I do, speaking to a fellow white man in that case. So it's really interesting there, and I'm going to err on the side that does he deserve all the hate that he was a cleat, sharpening son of a bitch who would intentionally fight you? Yes, he did beat up his own player for not running fast enough on the bases. His own teammate. Yeah, that's actually happened. He was on first place, and he was very upset that the young boy in front of him in second base wasn't running to third on a wild pitch. And he was very upset, and he let him know about it. Perhaps that fit the time. Perhaps you can also say, I don't care what time it was, we could be in the middle of the Civil War, and that's not okay. So it's kind of your call on that. But I think that the amount of hate and unbridled, unwavering, just I don't care what he's done. He's a terrible man. That's not the case. He was a very strong individual who took his licks plenty. His teammates broke his bats before he would go start playing because they did not like him that much in the very beginning. But whenever he quickly, started burning up the base paths and getting on base and getting hits, his teammates stopped doing that and said, oh crap, this guy's actually going to help us win. He's a very, very talented player. So it's interesting. He's still on the retired Wall of Fame for the Tigers. There is no number for him because obviously it's Ty Cobb back in the day, no numbers for him. So I guess just you can't have the last name Cobb for the Tigers. I don't know how that works out. But Cobb is retired for the Tigers, so honorable mention there. And he is somebody that we can look up to and be thankful for in a degree for his time period.
So I guess the Rays would be screwed if they trade Cobb over to him, huh?
I believe Cobb is not on the Rays.
Oh, that's right. He's not with the Rays anymore.
Correct. Yeah. Part of me says Baltimore for some reason. I don't know. That could be worth a check, but I don't know if that's just like that's the only.
Baltimore?
No. It's actually a machine. They just plug it in.
That's where we're all going anyway. Machine.
Well, Ty Cobb, the man who received 98.2% of the Hall of Fame votes on his first eligible year, is a man who our good friend dealer says does not deserve the hate he receives. And fun in-show fact, Ty Cobb was also dealer's pick for the best baseball player to never win a championship. Now, to close out this segment, Cousin Vinny, who's an athlete that you think may or may not deserve the hate they receive?
So I too am going to lean on the side of gets too much hate. I think this player has a negative rap, and I don't think he necessarily deserves it. I am referring to Chad Ochocinco, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Technically the Patriots too.
Technically the Patriots too. He did have 1 year with the Patriots. So Chad Ochocinco, one, he played in the era of Terrell Owens as well, and in the time when obnoxious touchdown celebrations and wide receivers that were loud and in your face and abrasive. Divas. Yep, that's the exact word. The wide receiver diva came from this era, the early 2000s to, I don't know, we'll say 2010, 2011, something like that. So, Ocho Cinco got named one of the biggest of the divas because he was loud, he was emotional on the sidelines. He changed his name to Ocho Cinco because his number was 85.
I do have to say there is one thing that I still hate about him. He changed it to Ocho Cinco, but it's actually Ochita Cinco. That's my problem.
See? And now you're going to call him culturally insensitive. No, I mean, he did personify the wide receiver diva. Here's why I don't think he's that bad a guy. I think the personality of a wide receiver, even in today's game, is such where there are divas. Hence Antonio Brown, hence Des Bryant, hence, I mean, there's names of them. That position, for whatever reason, the successful ones are typically kind of loud divas. Here's what I will say, though. Chad Ochocinco, during his run, was one of the most, if not the most, productive wide receiver in football. He was the Antonio Brown of his day. I'm going to throw a couple stats out for you real quick, and you tell me if this is a good wide receiver in the NFL. In his second year in the league, he goes for 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns. The next year, he goes for 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. The next year, he goes for 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns. The next year, he goes for 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. The next year, he goes for 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns. And the next year, he goes for 1,400 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's 7 years in a row of over 1,100 yards playing receiver. That's really difficult. He had his lowest total in that whole time was 70. This guy had a run there where he was incredible. But yes, his stats are great during his run. Yes, he was a diva. But here's why I don't think he's that bad a dude. If you have a chance, Google Chad Ochocinco tips. And what I mean by that is there is kind of a social media craze out there where he goes out to restaurants and he tips a lot of money to waiters and waitresses, which kind of a tough job to come by big tips sometimes. So he's giving money to people who live off their tips, basically, and he leaves fun notes. I'm going to give you an example. He had a $38 bill in Austin, Texas. He tipped $540. His note was, I only had 540 yards in 2008, which was really terrible. It pissed my head coach off. Thank you for the service. That's kind of a cool move. $38 bill, tips $600 on it. Okay, here's the next one. $91 bill, nice restaurant. Tip, $276. His note, I only had 276 yards with the Patriots, which was really horrible. And he gives the waiter $276. A few weeks later, $150 bill. Tips $300. There's no note there. But the
Is
next
that why
one,
I saw him in the welfare line?
he's actually doing okay on his money. These were fairly recent.
I know. I'm kidding.
The last one, check amount $18. $18.76 to be specific. A 20% tip on that would have been $3.63. Chad Ochocinco tipped $209. And his note was, I once had 209 yards in a game in 2007. Thanks for the service. That's a funny guy. That's a funny guy that is going back and You know what? Was he a little obnoxious? Did he change his name to his number? Yes, but during his run, he was one of the most productive receivers, if not the most productive receiver in football. And I think it's cool. I waited tables once upon a time, and I can tell you, if someone left me $200 and a funny note on a receipt for $30, that would make my entire freaking year to get that. Yeah. And so I think he's a good guy at heart. I think he's just a little loud. And watching him play, he was really fun to watch. He's a really talented guy. So I don't think Chad Ochocinco deserves as much hate as he gets. Is he a diva? Yes. But I think he's a good dude.
You know, they do say it's the small things that makes a person good or bad, and, well, Mighty's small little anecdotes, maybe Ochocinco doesn't deserve all the hate that he receives. Well, I would say this is quite the segment that we've wrapped up here. And for our last topic, you know, athletes, especially the all-time greats, Hall of Famers, etc., they all have, well, they're Hall of Famers for a reason. But just because they're Hall of Famers doesn't necessarily mean their career is perfect. With that being said, we are going to discuss the biggest failure, error, fuck up, or just flat out messed up in an otherwise fantastic career. And we're going to start this off with Coolhand.
Alright, well, I'm going to go out and do a sport that maybe not all of our listeners and probably most of y'all don't know. I'm going to go soccer. I'm going to English Premier League specifically.
How dare you?
This happened about 6 years ago. And it went down to the final day of the competition. And it was between Manchester City and Liverpool, like it was last year. And Liverpool, my team, was up 3-0 in the 60th minute. So there was about 30 minutes left in the game. And all they did do was hold on to the score. And they win the Premier League. Okay? Big deal. Lots of money. All kinds of stuff. Probably the greatest player in Liverpool history is a guy by the name of Steven Gerrard. And they were up. They got up 3-1. Man City had scored a goal. And Steven Gerrard coughed up the ball in the perfect position for Man City to drive down and score it. When this happened, they ended up scoring 3 more goals, and Liverpool lost the Premier League because of that play, essentially. So I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going Steven Gerrard, giving up one of the worst goals of all time.
Now,
to give Manchester City the Premier League title.
Now, for those of us uninitiated with Premier League, what position did Steven Gerrard play for Liverpool?
He was a midfielder.
A midfielder. And
Depending on the game, he was a central midfielder. We'll call it a central midfielder.
And so...
He played for the English national team too, didn't he?
Oh, he's one of the best English players of all time. Probably if you went back in the history of English soccer, he's probably a top 5 player.
Jesus.
Wow.
And does European soccer have like an equivalent of like a Hall of Fame like the American sports do, or is it just you're a legend or you're not?
I mean, he would absolutely be a first ballot, no questions asked. We're talking about 99% voter rate. One of the best players ever to play for England. Ever. And made one of the biggest gaffes.
Ever?
And so he, like I said, It was so disappointing, especially as a Liverpool fan. My grandmother's from Liverpool, so I'm a. And so, giving up that goal was just. It made me want to throw up in my mouth. I'm pretty sure I did at least a little bit. So I was so excited. I was so pumped up. You know, it's almost like if you were a Falcons fan with the Super Bowl with them and the Patriots, where you're like, oh, they're 28-3. It's no big deal. They're going to win this game. And all over the place.
Oh, jeez. Well, poor Steven
I had a very
Gerrard.
diarrhea visual from that.
Well, I would feel bad for Steven Gerrard, but apparently he's a top 5 English football player, so I'm not going to feel that bad for him. But yeah, that's a pretty big fuck-up for such an important game. Moving on.
Well, you should see his wife. You can't feel bad for him after you see his wife.
Alright, I'm Googling this right now. But in the meantime... Dealer...
I do need to say, I just want to thank for everybody for listening to the show tonight. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on. Y'all have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to talking to y'all again in the future.
Alright, have a good one, Coolhand.
And poof,
You guys,
he was gone.
And I'm out.
Poof. See? Poof, poof.
Just like that, he is gone. Alright, well, the show must go on. Dealer, who is your athlete that fucked up royally when they really needed to not do that?
Okay, so this one's a real simple one. It's not so much performance-wise on the field in a game setting. It was on the field. It was at a game. But whenever you think about this, it really does hurt his image. The man is a nice guy, and I'll say I haven't met him, but you know it is. He's won the Cy Young Award 3 times, got the Triple Crown, went to the All-Star Game 8 times. Take it with a grain of salt. You know, some people say All-Star Game is a celebrity contest, whatever it is. Sure, okay. Almost played baseball for 20 years and was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2015. What is his biggest mark, I would say, for the man named Pedro Martinez? That's right.
Pedro.
That's right. You guessed it. It is by grabbing a 78-year-old senior citizen by the head and throwing him onto the ground in the middle of a game. I would say that's definitely that is definitely takes the cake for pretty terrible things to do. In general, yeah, you could say, oh, you know, it's Red Sox, Yankees. You know, Don Zimmer's got a hot head too, and you know he'll come up to. Regardless, you still put your hands on his head and just completely level it. You're a professional baseball player, professional athlete who works out, you know, in a very steroid-esque questionable era too. And to completely manhandle a senior citizen like that looks terrible. It's such a bad mark. Could you imagine going to any kind of store, arguing with a senior citizen in line at Walmart, and then just throwing him on the ground? If you saw that, you'd be appalled. And as you know, rightfully was most of the baseball world with his actions, they were appalled. Other than that, he had a really, really good career. He did achieve a lot, like I said, with All-Star games, strikeout leader, wins leader. You know, he seriously was a very talented pitcher. He cares a lot about the kids, is very generous to the Dominican Republic. And, you know, honestly, I feel like if he could go back in time and remove that from his history, he would definitely remove throwing Don Zimmer on the ground.
Well,
Yeah, it's a scumbag move.
Yeah, that really is a dick move. There's no other way to put it, especially considering he has the accolades to back it up, like you mentioned. Well, let's keep this train moving as we go to Cousin Vinny for his pick for the biggest fuck up of an a great athlete who fucked up royally.
There we go. So I talked about Ricky Williams earlier. Fantastic college career. The Saints made, in my opinion, the biggest oof in a sports franchise history when they drafted him. But that's no fault of Ricky Williams. Ricky Williams, as a running back, when he came into the league, actually did okay. In his first year, he had 884 yards as a running back. In his second year, he was a 1,000-yard rusher. In his third year, he had 1,200 yards. In his fourth year, he led the league in rushing with 1,800 yards and 6 touchdowns, averaging 115 yards a game. One of, to this day, best seasons in running back history in the NFL. And then in the next year, he ran for 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns. So he didn't have as good a year, but he was still a 1,300-yard rusher. So the guy's having a great career. All right, he's clearly on pace, to be the stud that everybody thought he was going to be coming out of college. Well, he started really developing psychological issues, depression, anxiety, things like that, and he turned to the weed. And he turned to the weed hard. And at the time, 2002, 2003, the weed, to be caught smoking weed in the NFL was serious suspension stuff. So he had 2 positive drug tests during the 2003 season. And knowing that he was going to be suspended for at least 4 games, all this depression, all this anxiety, he retires in 2004. 5 years in, after a 1,300-yard year, again, he's really building himself up to be a premier back in the NFL like everybody thought he was going to be. He retires, and he slips into this really unfortunate spiral. Mentally, he's smoking all the time. He becomes a pretty Rastafarian, kind of weird, far out there, hippie type dude. And he derails his career in 2004. Now, he does come back in 2005, but he only plays 12 games because he's got to serve a 4-game suspension. He runs for 743 yards, and a 3rd drug test comes up positive. And with the NFL, you have 3 positive drug tests, you're out. You got to miss an entire season. So in 2006, he's suspended for an entire year. So the man goes from 1999 to 2003, a fantastic run. 2004, the weed fucks with his head, he retires. 2005 has a mediocre year. 2006, can't play the entire year because of drug tests. And then in 2007, he came back, he played in 1 game, ran for 15 yards. And his career was never the same. Now, in 2000, he did come back and play from 2007 to 2011. He did have a 1,100-yard year in 2009, 11 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards. It's not a bad season, but nothing like the man was capable of. His career was never the same after that. And I think, does he not go off the rails in 2003? Now, again, this isn't necessarily because he was just smoking pot all the time. He had some, mental issues that he was dealing with on his own. And quite frankly, I think we're 5 to 10 years away from the NFL allowing marijuana to be part of their, medicine regimen for players. But my point is, his career got totally derailed. He never got it back on track. And if he does get it on track, I think there's a chance Ricky Williams is a Hall of Famer. He still finishes his career with over 10,000 yards, over 65 touchdowns. But if he doesn't go off the rails, I think the man is considered one of the great running backs to ever play this game.
It really is a shame that he ended up having so many issues mentally that it affected him on the field. But yeah, there's not much we can do when on the field if inside your own brain is just doing something completely different. Our condolences.
Yeah, he's still a heavy marijuana activist. He's out in California. He's, where it's recreationally legal and everything now, and he's a heavy advocate for marijuana in football as an alternative treatment to pills and things like that. And he's still pretty far out there. I mean, the dude, one could say what happened to him was the real him, and he just happened to be super talented, but he always had these mental issues. But seems to be in a good place now, and he's got a fond place in my heart. But again, we're talking about guys who I think derailed their career and had a really big fuck up. I think failing 3 drug tests in those years turned a nice career into what could have been a Hall of Fame career.
I agree. And I think you opened up a big can of worms there about talking about how marijuana could be legal in the NFL, and that could be a huge topic for us about player performance being affected, perhaps, as well as influence on the youth, with leaders being able to, partake in the marijuana legally and in the eyes of the sport legally as well. So I think that will be a huge debate for us one day if we could ever get into that.
The NFL is going to lead the charge in that. I'd love to talk about that one day too, because the flip side is the NFL is notorious for opiate addiction and painkiller addictions and things like that because of the violent nature of the sport. And if it can potentially be a healthier alternative, and it's not a performance enhancer. In fact, I think we could probably all agree it's a performance dehancer. If that's not a word.
I don't know.
We'll put this on the subject. This would be a good. I think we'd have a great roundtable about this.
I agree, and I think that I'll say this. I mostly agree that it dehances you, right? But I think that there is the benefit that an athlete gets from smoking it, that you would no longer feel the pain that otherwise might inhibit you from performing your duty. Can we agree to that?
I think.
I think there's something to that. I think the alternative is players are taking pills now. I mean, players come off the field and get, back in the day, players would come off the field and get horse tranquilizers, essentially.
Right.
And go back out there with broken legs and play.
Yeah.
And they'd wind up with opiate addiction, things like that. So it's a great back and forth.
This would be a solid discussion.
Yeah. The influence it has on society in general. There's
because you got. I feel like a majority of America might speak up and say, "Hey, I don't want my child to be, watching us. I don't want my child to feel like, as an 8-year-old, if he gets, perhaps a helmet on his knee, God forbid, while he's playing, football, because Pee Wee football, they get the helmet. If the helmet hits the kid's knee, we don't want this 8, 9-year-old sitting there saying, well, I just need to start smoking marijuana. That'll be the solution. Because these people in the NFL, they smoke it. That's what they do when they're in pain. I'm an 8-year-old. I'm in a lot of pain right now, Mom. Give me that marijuana. And that'll be
Light
a
it up.
serious thing. Pass
me the blunt, Mom.
Yeah, all of a sudden, Mommy's stopping off at McDonald's to get the Happy Meal, and then she's stopping off to get the Happy Leaf. So, I think there will be a level of influence that you'll have to consider, certainly.
And we shall continue this subject. Shoot, we might even dedicate an entire show to this, honestly. But for now, I'm going to close out this subject with my biggest fuck up for an otherwise fantastic athlete. I'm not going to spend too much on this because this is a rather recent fuck up. Y'all, I don't believe that this fuck up rests entirely on this player's shoulders, but it definitely rests on a whole lot of it. The 2016 Golden State Warriors lost a 3-1 lead, and I do believe Stephen Curry faces a good chunk of the brunt of the blame for that. In my opinion, he honestly does, because you're up 2 games, 1 game to win. Just I still do not understand to this day what excuses they could come up with. Do I think Stephen Curry is a choker? No. But he had an opportunity to seal the series on multiple occasions, and he missed. The biggest one being when Stephen Curry was being guarded by Kevin Love, a power forward, and Stephen Curry is one of the fastest point guards. He got away from Kevin Love, who was defending him, took a three-point shot, and missed. There's just no excuse for that. Stephen Curry, you fucked up. You're the greatest shooter the NBA has ever seen, and yet you still couldn't pull it off. Oh, Stephen Curry, I'm sorry, but you fucked up royally here. Did Draymond Green and Klay Thompson underperform too? Of course. But by God, Stephen, where were you? Where were you, Stephen Curry? And now that I'm done impersonating a horse from the Babe movie, I believe it's time we close out this show. My name is Mickey, and I'm the old producer of the Backyard Bullshit Podcast. Cousin Vinny had to sign off early because it is rather late, and he has to work in the morning, the poor bastard. Coolhand previously signed off. Dealer, would you like to sign off? Any parting words for our audience? Any parting words? Anything? Just
I don't know what they're going to have to say, but I can speak for myself. That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yes, and folks, I know we appreciate you listening, and we will catch you next time.